We have reached the end of row 41. Let's check our tie on the first leg. I've tied the chain. Yes, we will fasten it to the first leg. After you tie your tie a chain and weave a long prominent leg around your first leg. In the same way, the second leg is a tall protruding leg from the third leg, a long protruding leg from the back. So far we have 3 protruding long legs from the front. We come to the middle base. According to the usual shell weave, we weave 3 prominent long bases. We do the same shell weave, creating a chain and weaving 3 prominent long bases from the front in this way now. We have come to this part. We are going to actually shorten the 3 chains we have within the 3 base chains, then 3 more chains in the space of the next short base, 3 chains in the next space of the short base. Please be careful, friends. Now you have space up to the short base. Around the middle base of the next shell, you will weave a shell, that is, 3 short bases that are woven prominently from the front. This part of your weave will be 2 chain spaces of 3 short bases. Now, make a chain. Come here and around this middle base from the next shell, weave 3 prominent bases from the front. Next, move to this part on the first base, 1 long prominent base. In the same manner, on the next 2 bases, weave a long prominent base on each of them. We will reach this part where we had 2 long prominent bases. Here, where you make a chain, you should make 2 chains in this space. Around the first base, weave a long protruding base from around the next base. In this way, we will arrive at 2 chains again to this part that can be used from the next part of the first base. A base of the second base, around it a base of bases. They are all prominent. Make sure to pay attention. The third base is the same and it can be continued. Knit this part that I explained to you in the same way until you reach the end of the row. We have reached the end of row 41. I will fasten the last 2 chains that I knit here on this long base. I make a chain on the first raised base. I come here, I take thread from around the long raised base, I knit a half long base. I go around the next long raised base, I also take thread there, I knit a half long base. I combine these 3 together. In fact, I completed the first and second grades together, and now I'm heading to the third grade. I weave 2 long prominent bases from the front. Then I loop around this base, taking from the middle of the shell base, the middle base, and crafting 3 long prominent bases. I knit from the front, meaning another shell base is woven. Then I weave a chain between the shell base and the middle base. Here I weave another 3 prominent long bases from the front, which is also repeated here. Now look at this section. Now, in the space of 3 chains, I am knitting a short base, adding 3 more chains, and then in the next 3 chain gap, I also knit a short base. Again, around this long base, I knit 3 more prominent long bases from the front. If you look closely, my weaving pattern is gathering in this area, meaning that these shell bases are getting closer together. I will chain 1, come back to this shell base, weave 1 shell with 3 long prominent bases from the front, then pick up this long base. The next step is weaving 2 long prominent bases from the front until I reach the end of this section. Now, with 3 stitches together, 3 threads on the hook will become 1. Then I add 2 more chains and come to this long prominent stitch. I will knit from 1 prominent long stitch, add 1, 2, 3 chains, then craft 1 short stitch in between these long stitches, add 3 chains and circle around the next long base. I am weaving a prominent long base from the front. I add a chain and return to this section. Pay attention, we are at the beginning of the next part, as I have already explained the pattern. Around the first base is a half short base, around the second base a long base. Weaving the prominent long bases from the half, I connect the 3 threads on the hook together. Around the third base, I weave 2 prominent long bases from the front and continue in the same way as explained here until we reach the end of this row. We've reached the end of row 42. Close off on this base and on the last 2 chains you've weaved. We're starting row 43. I will create a chain, wrap the thread around the hook, around this base. I will knit a half length, go around the next base, knit another half length, and then merge these 3 threads on the hook together. Then I will proceed to the next base, to the long base around the base. Next, I will knit the bases. They're all prominent from the front. Then I move to this middle base of the next shell. I knit 1 shell, which means 3. the long base where all 3 long legs are protruding from the front, I will make a chain and I will reach this part. Again, I will weave 3 long legs around this space, meaning on the shell, another shell. Here I have a space of 3 chains, a short base in the space of 3 chains. I take the middle base again on the next shell and I weave 3 long bases where all 3 long bases are protruding from the front. Take a look at this. It has all come together now. I make a chain. I come here on this shell base that I have here. I take the middle base and around the middle base I weave 3 prominent long bases. Now it becomes a shell base. I come around it with thread around the hook for the first rotation. Two long legs protruding from the front. Now I have 1 long leg. With 1 stitch around the long leg, I knit half a long leg around the stitch. 3 threads on the hook become 1. We have reached the middle of the work. I put the chain around the long prominent base from the front again. Here I make 3 chains. I reach this part in the space of 3 chains, 1 short base, 3 chains, then 1 short base. Until the chain on the long base stands out from a long stand at the front and I reach 2 chains to the next part. That is, I repeat from the first row and knit this part around the integration of a long standout from the half round of the next base and a long standout from the half. I connect the 3 threads on my hook together around the next base. I knit up to the long protruding base from the front and repeat in the same way as I explained in this part. We will finish our work. We will reach the end. Let's start. What do? We make a chain, we go around this stitch, we weave a long base that stands out from the side. We go around the base, then we have a long stand that stands out from the front and half. We have 3 threads on the hook we knit together around the next base, up to the long standing base of the. We weave around the base when we reach this part. It's the middle one of the 3 bases we have. From the front, we weave a long chain. Here, around this middle pillar, there are 3 raised pillars. 2 long legs protruding from the front, but half of this. On the far side of the middle base from 3 to the long raised base. The short base can also be left, my friends, as long as the long base. Highlighted from the face, but half of 5 threads on your hook. You are holding a thread. Tie 5 threads together. Make a chain around this middle base. From 3 long raised legs to 3 long legs. Raise. Now we are moving on to this section. This is the first part of the base. It's a long base protruding from its circumference. Together we make 2 chains. Here we weave a chain around this long protruding base from the front. We make another chain, then repeat around the same long protruding base from the front. Here we have a longer post that stands out from the middle. After that, 3 threads on the hook become 1. We make a chain and circle this shorter base again, this long stand out from the middle around the next short stand. Initially, we unite 3 threads on the hook. We make a chain and are now working on this short base. We create another outstanding base from the side and are now moving on to the next long base. This is a long project, prominent from the side. We knit, unite 3 threads on the hook and make another chain again. On this long protruding base, we knit from the long protruding base from the full side. Your work will look like this. And after excluding the first and last bases, you should have 1, 2, 3 outstanding long bases and have 1, 2, 3, and 4 single chain spaces. I'm weaving, now moving on to the area around this base. The center of this shell texture receives 3 outstanding long bases. Knitted from the front, this means another shell base is on top of the previous shell base. After that, I proceed to the next area. No more chains are required, we can just move around it. Next, the 4th stage. Take the base of the claim or entirely around the base and create a long standout row in the front. Let's wrap around this middle leg from these 3 to the next standout row on its middle base to 3 long standout rows in front. Here is how your work should look like. Then you proceed around the first base with 2 long standout rows. Weave forward and go around the second base of a long row. You are seeking recompense from half of my claim. You will also create a long standout row from the middle, 3 threads on the collar. You put one together, you make a chain. We come to this middle part of the work. This middle part of your work should be on all these bases. The long base should stand out in front. For these combined bases, we weave 2 long protruding bases around each of them with a distance of 1 open chain. Far around. I knit 2 long protruding bases from the front with a chain of the next base, and likewise the next stitch. I knit 2 long protruding bases around it. This way, with the distance of 1 chain around the next base, we've had 3 stitches. First and the second long prominent base from the back. We now reach a chain to the long prominent base. Around it, I weave 2 long prominent bases from the front. Pay attention, friends. Now there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 long bases. It stands out because the distance between both bases is 1 chain. When you reach this side, you add 2 more chains, and from this part, we actually start weaving from the beginning of the row, which I fully explained for this part, that is, claiming a tall semi-raised base. The second base is a long semi-prominent base. 3 threads on the hook become 1. The next base is woven around 2 long prominent bases from the half, and this weaving continues till you reach the end of the row.